So good afternoon, everyone. I have the honor of presenting a security topic today to the post-lunch crowd. So hopefully not too many of you are in a food coma. If so, you're more than welcome to bump your neighbor, make sure they wake up. My name is Jacob Silzer. I am a trust and security advisor for Salesforce, dedicated to the Heroku Services product line. And today, I want you to think of me as your cloud Sherpa on a journey helping you secure your Heroku applications. So first off, as any good cloud Sherpa, I have to show you this slide, my favorite slide at Dreamforce. Make sure you make your purchasing decisions based off of currently available functionality, not based on roadmap. Great, so hopefully most of you know what Heroku is. I'll give you a brief overview. For those of you that already know what Heroku is, if you stick around to the end of the presentation, I'll actually tell you what the name or the word Heroku means itself and how it came about. It's a little added bonus if you stick around for the whole presentation. So Heroku is a platform as a service. It allows your developers, the people who are programming in Go, Ruby, Node.js, Clojure, whatever it may be, to take an idea and to quickly and elegantly make that into a web-facing application. Without having to worry about all the traditional headaches of the underlying management of the infrastructure. So what do I mean by infrastructure headaches? So if you're going to build an application, you have to worry about which infrastructure as a service provider to select, evaluate each of those. You may even want to build your own data center. I don't recommend doing that, though. You have to worry about doing networking, storage, operating systems, containerization, monitoring, etc. And not to mention, you also have to worry about security. You have to worry about things such as making sure your application is highly available, it's performant, and potentially compliance as well. So as I mentioned, we take care of all those headaches for you, and we let you focus on the code. So that's what's going to allow you to provide immediate value to your end consumers, is the ability to focus on code and deliver functionality or applications to your customers. Great, so now we'll jump into the meat of the presentation. So security is a shared responsibility. We have to work together to ensure the security of your data, and we do a lot in the back end to make sure your data is secure. That's not the focus of the presentation today. We could talk about that for hours as to all the great things we do, but the focus today is really the configurations we make available to you so that you can better secure your Heroku applications. And just to point out, the reason this is so important, I think Gartner highlights this best, is by the year 2020, they predict that over 95% of cloud security failures will be because of the end users, not because of the cloud service providers. So it won't be Salesforce, it won't be Heroku, it's most likely going to be you that causes a cloud security issue. So before you start any great journey, it's very important that you have the right tools to start that journey. So you should be thinking about what kind of data are you going to be placing into your application? What's the sensitivity of that data? And also, where are the users located who will be accessing that application when making a decision as to what tools you need? So with Heroku, we provide 3 different runtime models. We have the common runtime. So that's a multi-tenant version of Heroku. It's great for most use cases, most non-sensitive use cases. Next up, we have private spaces. So private spaces is a completely network isolated version of Heroku, or a single tenant version of Heroku. And the way to think of that is having your own public, data center in the public cloud. And then finally, we have Heroku Shield. So Heroku Shield is meant for more regulated use cases. It's a fortified version of the private spaces that provides some additional security benefits. Next up, once you have a runtime deployment model, you want to also ensure that you have a database attached to your application. And we offer Heroku Postgres as a managed database service. And with Heroku Postgres, we have a number of different types of database plans. If you're going to be managing or storing data that's more sensitive in nature, I definitely recommend picking Premium, Private, or Shield, because you'll have some additional security benefits, such as encryption at rest of your data, and also those different services have some additional high availability or resiliency capabilities built right into the tools. Finally, you want to make sure that you deploy your application to a region that makes sense. You place your data in the right country. A lot of that's emotional. A lot of our customers want to make sure, or humans want to make sure their data is close to where they actually reside. And also, it makes sense for performance reasons as well. You want to make sure the data is as close to the users as possible. So now that we have the tools, it's important that we start off on our journey. So I'm going to take you up the mountain here. We're going to cover 3 primary areas. We're going to cover user access configurations that are available to you. We're also going to cover network access configurations as well. And finally, a couple advanced security settings. And because today's only a 20-minute talk, I can only cover a small sliver of the configurations we make available to customers. But I'll provide you some information afterwards you can go to learn about the other configurations available as well. So first off, we have 2-factor authentication. So you don't want a password to be the only thing between your data and the outside world. As users, we inherently don't pick very secure passwords. We use the same passwords across multiple different services, both enterprise and then our own consumer applications as well. So I highly recommend that you enable 2-factor authentication, that you make sure that there's a second password that changes every 60 seconds. It can only be used one time for securing the access to your Heroku deployment. And we provide a number of different configurations to you in this area, or I guess applications that you can integrate with. You can integrate with Salesforce Authenticator, Google Authenticator, or a number of other applications as well. Next up, single sign-on. So you want to make sure that you're centralizing access throughout your organization, so that if you terminate a user one time, it terminates across all the different applications that you're using. You have the ability to integrate Heroku into your single sign-on configuration or your identity provider, so that when you do terminate the user access, you're terminating their access in Heroku as well. And again, that's very important to make sure that you don't have users, once they're terminated, to have access to your applications. Next up, role-based access controls. So I want to back up a little bit and kind of give you an example. So if you're managing an apartment complex and you have a new resident come in, you're not going to hand them a master key that allows them access to all the units in the apartment complex. They can do a lot of damage if they have that level of access. Same concept here with your Heroku deployment model. You don't want to provide your users more access than they require to perform their job function. So Heroku provides a number of different granular access capabilities to restrict access to both at the organization level, so you can control who has access to org-wide security configurations or configurations in general, who can see your usage information. You can also configure teams, so sets of applications and users. And then also you can do the individual permissions per an application as well. And you can choose and pick which access rights you want your users to have to each of the applications you're building within your deployment model. Next up, so this is a newer feature we just shipped this year. It's called Heroku Postgres Credentials. So again, you don't want to give any application or any user a master key to your data store, your database. So with Heroku Postgres Credentials, you have the ability to define a role. And for that role, you can configure up to 5 different permissions, and you can definitely have all 5 permissions or just 2 of the 5. And you can also have those roles tied to just a single schema or single table within your database. So let's say you make the business analyst role, you only want them the ability to view the data within a table, so you give them the select permission, and you want them the ability to update existing data in your database as well, so you give them the update permission as well. Now that business analyst role, you can now attach that to an application or to multiple applications, so that application only has that level of access to the database. So that's the user access configurations. Next up, I'm going to cover a couple of the network access configurations. Stage 2 in our journey up the mountain. So with Heroku Private Spaces and Heroku Shield, we give you the ability to restrict which IPs can access your Heroku deployment. So you can define up to 20 different IP ranges per space. And my recommendation is that for any access that's coming into your Heroku space, that you do set this configuration. A lot of our customers, they will have a VPN required to access their corporate network. and then from their corporate network, they'll then access Heroku and ensure that it only goes over a predefined set of IPs tied to your corporate network. Also, we have whitelisting for add-ons. So with Heroku, we talked about the different runtime models and then some of the data services. There's actually 150 plus additional third-party add-ons that you can use to expand the capabilities of your application, to speed up deployment, or to speed up creation of your applications as well. And with those with those different add-ons, they may have different levels of security maturity, or for example, if you're building a HIPAA application, not all those add-ons are going to be HIPAA compliant. So your organization may want to go through and only whitelist the add-ons that have gone through your security review or are appropriate for your specific use case. Through the whitelisting for add-ons capability, we give you the ability to restrict which add-ons your developers can configure, can utilize in the development of their applications. Okay, so we're already up the mountain to the advanced security settings. So there's 2 additional settings that I'd like to talk about. So again, this VPC Peering, this is a new feature that just shipped last week, actually. We've had it in beta for a while. But if you have an existing AWS deployment, an existing deployment in a VPC, you can now peer that VPC with your existing Heroku private space or Heroku Shield deployment so that the data doesn't go over the open internet. The one thing is you do have to make sure that the AWS VPC that you do have is within the same region that you have your Heroku deployment as well. It's a great new feature, adds a lot of security benefit, and I definitely recommend you checking it out if you're already using AWS. Also, with Heroku Shield, as I mentioned, we do, it's meant more for HIPAA or PCI use cases. A very important aspect of regulated data is tracking who has access to that data, what actions that people are performing on that data as well. So with Heroku Shield, we have an advanced logging capability that now logs every command that your users type into the command line interface. So everything's captured, and you have the ability to send those logs externally. So you can send it to your existing SIEM tool or security event monitoring tool, or you can also send it to any of our number of our add-on login providers. So we have add-on providers like LogDNA or Sumo Logic that offer some HIPAA compliant capabilities and give you the ability to parse those logs. There's some other talks later at Dreamforce where we go into that a little bit more in depth and actually show you how the logs are pulled over and what the logs look like and the information that you can mine out of those logs as well. So definitely recommend checking out those sessions if you have time. So I've kind of sped through this, but these are, in my opinion, the primary configurations that you can enable to increase the security of your Heroku applications. I'd recommend that you check out our Dev Center, which is basically our online help manual. We just released a brand new article last Friday that goes into all of these different configurations plus many more and provides detailed information as to how you can actually configure each of these different configurations for your Heroku deployment. Also, we have a Heroku security booth back in the middle if you have any additional questions. And you can always open a support ticket or email me directly. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I promised to explain the name Heroku for you, how it came about. So it's actually a made-up word. It's a combination of 2 words. So one word being hero, and the ku part of Heroku is actually for haiku, which is a Japanese word for a Japanese poem. That has 17 syllables. So the first line, 5 syllables, second line, 7 syllables, last line, 5 syllables. So I thought it was most appropriate that I leave you with not parting words, but a parting haiku to summarize my presentation today. So it's not meant to rhyme, and I've color-coded it so you can see the different syllables. But if you take anything away from this presentation, please remember that security is a joint effort between us, so please play your part. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.